Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. And today, first time in a little while, I am joined by James Walker. Welcome, James. How's it going?
Very good, Dan. Great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No worries at all. And today we're going to be talking about first steps into the industry. Well, not even into the industry, actually. No, we're actually going to take it back further than that. We're going to talk about first steps into filmmaking. And this is very exciting because we're going to hear about James's first steps, which was a few years before my first steps, which is also going to be, so there's going to be a little bit of difference there, which I think is going to be really interesting. And then on top of that, I think we can sort of consider how the first steps maybe are even more different for today. So for young filmmakers that are looking to make their first steps into filmmaking or even content making, because we live in a big, beautiful world of content these days, don't we, James?
We do, but I think it's really great to talk about our first time, because I think, there's a difference between you've never made a film and you've made a film, and that's a big jump. And then you've made your first, and then you can go on and keep going. And obviously at Young Film Academy, we always say, get out there, do it. You've got to start somewhere. You've got to make your first film. Because, again, to bash the drum, that's what we say at Young Film Academy. What is a filmmaker? A filmmaker is someone who makes films. So as soon as you've made a film, you are a filmmaker. So let's talk about our first times. I mean, this is a story that I feel I've told over 20 years. We're coming up 20 years down at Young Film Academy now, and I feel we've told this story like so many, schools, events, and whatever. And it's wonderful to have a chance to talk about this, because I think Young Film Academy wouldn't have been founded, I think, if I and Ed, who I co-founded Young Film Academy with, hadn't had this experience, which we had. Yeah. So. Let's do it.
For those that maybe have come to summer camp and heard some of this story, are we gonna get some sort of even juicier bits? Are we gonna get some?
Oh yeah,
we'll
get this. This is the long version.
The long version.
This is the extended director's cut version.
So buckle up, old buddy, old pal, because you're in big trouble. So your first film, I know, was called Taboo. I've actually seen a behind-the-scenes sneak peek that not many people in this world have seen, because there is a behind-the-scenes video that will probably never see the light of day. But I have got to enjoy it. So I have a slight inkling of even what it was like to be like at that location. But I imagine that wasn't a location that was immediately accessible for you. It was because it's a castle essentially, right? Or it feels like a castle.
Yeah, well, I mean. Well, let's start at the beginning, because I think, hopefully the point of this story is that it becomes accessible to everybody. Young people listening can go, look, I've never made a film. I don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So maybe we start at the beginning. So I was at school, and I was really into theatre, writing. Those are my favourite subjects. I loved English at school. I loved, writing and drama and studying plays and stuff like that. And so I started writing and acting, because also that's another way that a lot of young people, I think, get into this. They kind of, that first expression where you want to express stories. Well, almost the easiest way is acting. You can kind of pick up a script. It's usually well written. It's by someone clever, and the play is good. And you can get up on a stage and you can show off a bit, and you can kind of test yourself. And you feel at the end of that night, when the audience are there, and you can feel that live storytelling thing happening. And I suppose that's a lot of people's first way in, and it was for me too. So I was a kid and was at school, and essentially the story was that Ed Bowes and I, so Ed and I, who's the other co-founder with me of Young Film Academy, we were kind of bored by the idea of just doing the normal school play thing. Most schools have it. It's once a year. The English teacher does it, or the staff pass it around, and then you do that. And I'd done a bit of that. And we got together with two others. So there were four of us in this group. And we brilliantly, therefore, came up with a name.
Oh, my God.
Because there were four of us.
Four amigos.
Quadrant.
Quadrant Pictures? Or
just Quadrant, because this was
just
theatre.
Quadrant. Of course.
So we'll name check. There was a George Cedarquist and Nick Castoro. So there were four boys. And we decided that we would do this outlandish thing where we would put on plays at the school that we'd chosen, not the school. So we did a couple of these where we chose these plays and we put them on.
Like Shakespeare or
no, because we didn't. We got to do like the stuff that wasn't that. So we did a play called Untidy Endings, which was a play sort of set in New York about a young gay man, and it was just playing slightly different. It was just slightly different from what the school was doing, and it felt quite fun and edgy, and we really enjoyed it. And so we'd sort of done a couple of those. And meanwhile, Ed in particular was a film nut. So Ed was always into film. Theatre wasn't so much his thing. And I very much I came from theatre kind of into film. Ed really went film into theatre. And he was obsessed at the time with Tarantino. That was the big thing. So he loved a bit of Tarantino. So he I think, or I can't remember whose idea it was. Someone said, well, we'd done a few plays and we said, well, why don't we make a film? So I was like, yeah, great idea.
The logical next step.
I do remember Ed at one point, I think it was an early version, there was a filmmaking competition, I believe, run by Empire magazine, which is still going. And Ed was a big Empire fan. I always was reading Empire at school. And this film competition was like, shoot a scene and send it in and you could win, blah, blah, blah. Can't remember what it was.
Nice.
And I remember Ed saying, right, great, let's shoot this scene. So, but then in those days, there was a question, of cameras. Well, because no one had this is pre-mobile phones, people. I mean, we're old. We're proper old here. So, we're going back to what is this now? I'm going to reveal my age, but it must be like 1995, 1994, something like that.
Yeah.
So the school, we were lucky enough to be at a school that had a camera, right? And it was housed in the science department in the electronics lab, run by someone who was a wonderful character called Max Horsey. And Max Horsey loved this camera, and he used to film events at the school. Sort of, if there's a carol service at the end of term type thing, he'd film it and then put it on video. And he had a video editing suite in the electronics lab. Now, for those young people listening to this, you're like, well, yeah, I've got a computer. It's got editing software. What do you mean a video editing suite? This thing was massive. I mean, it was it was the size of half a room, and it had loads of knobs and twiddly bits. And we're talking about VHS. This is VHS. So a lot of, again, young people are going, what is he talking about? What's VHS? So if you haven't seen it, Google what a VHS tape looks like. It was tapes. That was how things worked in the day. When you went to the video store, you rented it, you had a VHS. Do you remember VHS? Are you too young for VHS?
Oh, no. Yeah, I remember it. I remember my parents buying like a widescreen VHS of Star Wars, even though none of the TVs in the house were yet widescreen, but they wanted to future-proof themselves. Although by the time we got widescreen TVs, obviously then DVD was out, so I just remember always watching Star Wars in the narrowest sort of rectangle. Mostly just the screen was black.
Fuzzy, because the tape, and when you rewound it, you get all the light.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it feels like now super retro to young people. It's and there's also that annoying thing where you had two types of VHS players. Do you remember that? There was like Betamax and something else.
Betamax, yeah, which was a slightly different form factor, I think, wasn't it? Like it's a different medium. Like you couldn't put VHSs in a Betamax, and you couldn't put Betamax.
Oh, that's right. The whole thing was a pain. Anyway, so at my school, so the only way you could film, so we had a camera that took these VHS tapes. So these VHS is big; they're like the size of a book, and so the camera is massive, clunky thing. And you put the book in the VHS tape, and then you'd record, and then you had to put. I don't know how we transferred that tape into the editing system, but I think that was it. It had to like live edit off a tape, so you had these big scrolly wheels that you needed, and it would sort of. And every time you did an edit point, we'll come to this a bit more in when we talk about the post of this film, you were literally degrading the tape. So every time you rewound and fast forward the footage, your master tape got worse. So it wasn't like digital now where you're like, you play with it as much as you like. You don't want to do it too much because you literally, it's like kind of you're rubbing it with the equivalent of a bit of sandpaper every single time. Anyway, so back to this story about Empire magazine. So this is pre-Taboo, the idea of Taboo. So we go to the lab and we borrow this camera. Can we borrow this camera for an afternoon, sir? Yes. So we go up, and I remember Ed had written this scene. I think it happened, and I remember it was like in a bar, and someone was shot, and all this stuff. And Ed had written a script, but we went up into like a music practice room. And I sat on like a wheelie chair in my school uniform and sort of pretended to be all the parts or something. And Ed basically just pressed record and didn't know what he was doing. He kind of filmed me doing stuff. But it was such interesting because I could see this with young people now. Like in our minds, we were in a bar and I was in this scene and I was being shot.
Yeah.
But because we're used to theatre, which is a bit more sort of, it's less literal as a medium. It's a bit more like you pretend, and people go, I
suspension of disbelief.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And so we ended up, so we shot this and we were like, yes, nailed it. I'm sure that looks amazing. And then I remember like a couple of days later, we go to the electronics lab, we do, and we get to watch what we'd shot. And what we're watching is a schoolboy in his school uniform, sitting on a desk chair, in what's quite evidently a practice room, very histrionically and over-the-top acting-wise, sort of pretending to be in some bar and then being shot. And it just looks like a kid on a chair in a practice room.
It looks like what you filmed, basically.
It looks exactly like what we filmed. But it was a real lesson, that, because actually, I often tell this story on Film Academy where one of our youngest members at the beginning of 20 years ago, we had a young lad came on a 4-day film school. And I said, what's your film going to be about? And he said, well, vampire. I said, well, that's going to be fantastic. Well, I said, what are you going to play? And he said, well, I'm the vampire. I said, great. How will we know? And he goes, well, because I'm a vampire. So I said, but within the film, how do we know that you're the vampire? And he said, and he looked at me because we were on different wavelengths here. And he said, because I'm a vampire. And so we were like, will you have the teeth or are you going to do it? And he's like, no, they'll just know I'm a vampire. And it was kind of that thing that because it was in his mind. So I was making all those mistakes. So we do this very bad test and we realized that filmmaking is a little harder than we thought. And I think at that point we had no concept of edit points. We didn't really have a concept of like shooting the scene in different angles.
Did you, just to like rewind back a tiny bit, did you not want to write a play before trying to write some film stuff? I appreciate Ed is obviously the one that wrote the scene for this, but if you were theatre people, was there not the urge to come up with your own material in that world first, or did writing material for film seem easier?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, because I went on to write quite a lot of theatre afterwards, but I don't think at this stage. I mean, I think I was writing that as well. I think I was writing radio plays, which is another great thing, by the way. It's a nice and easy and cheap way to tell stories. And I was going on writing courses quite precociously. But I think I hadn't written and performed yet a piece of theatre that I'd made. I think I did a couple at school. We had like a competition where you could put on a play, and I think maybe I did a bit of that. So there was a bit of that.
Sure.
But not a lot.
Yeah.
And I think we were just attracted with the idea of a film because we'd been inspired. There was a group above us a few years before us who had written a play and they'd put it on. And I remember it was absolutely amazing. And in fact, one of the people who was involved in that, Jamie Campbell, who has come on and done quite a lot with Young Film Academy, who is one of the directors of 11 Film, who made Sex Education now. And he's having an amazing and phenomenal career, and he's a wonderful and creative man. And I'd seen sort of Jamie and what they'd done a few years above me at school, and we were super inspired by that play. And I think we kind of wanted to do the film version of a play, because no one really tried to do a film before.
Yeah.
In any kind of way. So we went, essentially, then I suppose, what was it going to be about? Like, because that's the first thing you start with, like, what's your film going to be about? And I remember we were teenagers, right? So it was sort of black magic. That was big. The occult.
Yeah.
And then I do remember there was that real sense, I think we started, which we've talked about this, is a really good thing, is to kind of almost work out where you're going to shoot first, because location is a big thing, and then kind of build your story slightly around what you've got, which actually we've just done on Project Paradiso for Young Film Academy in Sicily, and it's actually quite a good way to get into it. So Ed had some friend of Ed's dad knew someone who worked for the National Trust.
I see.
And the National Trust looked after some of these, like, not big castles, because they obviously do big castles, but there are some sort of smaller ones where they take a kind of, they look after them, but they're shared in some way with other owners.
The more moderate castles.
Small castle. So anyway, we wrote to this gentleman who worked, and we basically said, could we come and film in this castle for, I think it was a weekend, maybe had 4 days or something.
Yeah.
And he amazingly replied back. And these are the days, there's no emails here. This is, long form letter, And he replied and said, sure, yes. And I don't think he even asked for any payment. I think he just was happy to support young people who wanted to do something.
Yeah.
And so now what we had was kind of a potential location. I remember it was in winter when we shot it. So I can't remember what time exactly when it was, but it must have been in school holidays. Because we were now just turning 17. I think we were 16 when we planned it and 17 when we kind of shot it. And so now we had this idea of this castle, and we had myself and another guy were going to act in it. So we had two actors, two male actors in a castle. It's a bit like a game of puzzle pieces, right? You sort of, well, how do you join the dots?
And did you have a deadline already? Like, did you know when you were going to be filming? So it was a matter of like, we have to get something done? Or was it just, oh, we've got a castle that we can use at some point?
I think there probably was. Some dates that had to work around other events at the castle. That was probably it. And there's also probably a thing, we had exams, and so we couldn't do it during that time. And that was revision time and all those things that young people who are familiar with listening to this.
I didn't know that clock was ticking, whether that was sort of...
I think it probably was. It was probably because they could, and that's true with any venue. You kind of want to use the downtime, right? When when it's not busy with other things, because that's when people might let you use stuff, because otherwise they'd be renting it for money. So I think we had this sense, and it was probably 3-4 months away, and we knew we had this castle, so we knew we had it for I can't remember, whatever it was, sort of 3-4 days. I don't think how did we even go on a recce to that castle? Maybe I'd seen a photograph of it. I think that was all. And then I was charged with being the script writer. And so I kind of went away and we started talking about stories. And I remember Ed said, well, films need a film star. So I was like, yeah, true. Yeah. But we got me at the time, which is not exactly a film star. I mean, been in like 3 school plays. And we got this other lad.
Local legend, though, James. You're underselling yourself here.
Hardly. And
you one of the lead parts of Quadrant, I heard.
I was one of the 4 best known members of Quadrant. And so me and this other lad, and then I think I said, we need a film star. So we sit there kind of mulling it over, and we think, well, hold on a second. I wonder if there's any film stars who have ever been to our school. That's a good start. So
it's a good way of thinking.
We went and asked. There was a sort of kind of department with some old member of staff who seemed to know stuff, right? Mm. So we went and asked him, and he went, "Oh well, there's Desmond Llewellyn." So we looked at him slightly blankly. Who's Desmond Llewellyn? He goes, "Well, you've definitely seen him." And we're like, no. And this is something I do at school sometimes when we're there. It's like, who is Desmond Llewellyn? Because everybody has seen Desmond Llewellyn. So if you're at home, if you're listening to this now, in what series of movies, in what famous franchise of British movies did Desmond Llewellyn play a regular part in many, many movies?
And now imagine the countdown timer ticking, as in the one from the show Countdown.
And the answer is...
Brilliant.
Dan, your tester?
Me? You want me to announce?
Yeah.
He played Q in James Bond.
He did. He was the original Q in the James Bond movies, the guy with the gadgets. And he was the older man, and he had sort of grey hair, very sweet, sort of lovely demeanour and personality. And he was an absolute screen icon. He was a legend, right? Everybody knew Desmond Llewellyn. And it turned out that Desmond had been a repertory theatre actor throughout the sort of his early part of his career. So that means you go into a theatre and they do they're doing many shows at the same time, and you take a part in all the different shows. So you kind of, it's fun. It used to be a thing in theatre. It doesn't really happen so much now. So he was very versatile. And then later in his career, but he was never sort of hugely famous. And then he got cast as Q in the early days of the James Bond films when no one knew what a huge hit it was going to be. And then, of course, once you're cast, pretty much you're done. That's you. Yeah. So he became that role. And then obviously in later life, they've changed it. And now Ben Whishaw has played that part recently. But he was in, I don't know how many of the Bond films he was in, but it was always in my childhood, Sundays, watch a Bond film. There's that. And I used to love the Q scenes with the gadgets, right?
Yeah.
Did you used to like those?
Oh, loved them. Really cool.
So we're like, wow, this is amazing. We never knew that Desmond Llewellyn went to our school. It's brilliant. So again, we thought, well, we'll write him a letter. So we literally get out a bit of, white paper, in our best handwriting, dear Mr. Llewellyn. We're at you're old school. We are trying to make a film. We don't really have very much experience. In fact, we never made a film before. Would you like to come and be in it?
Yeah, it's a strong pitch.
Strong pitch. We are going. The only thing we know is we're going to be filming at this castle in Wales, because the castle, I think I mentioned that earlier, was in Wales, that we've managed to find, and these are the dates. I don't know if you'd be at all available. It would be such an honour to have you in our movie. And I think we'd come up with the idea that if we did get someone like Desmond, who was a sort of older male figure, and we were two younger actors, it was going to be about the occult, and he could play the devil. So I think we put that in the letter. We're like, P.S., we'd love you to play the devil. And I think we were pretty calculating, because we had realised that when we looked him up, and there was no IMDb there or those things, but we realised that he wasn't doing a lot of other stuff. It wasn't as if you saw Desmond Llewellyn in lots of other films, right? He only picked, and it turned out that actually that was the truth. He was filming for 2 days a year. He got paid a fortune to do his 2 days on Bond, and then the whole of the rest of the year he lived in Bexhill-on-Sea, and his wife unfortunately had dementia, and he would sort of look after her, and he didn't do a lot else. And as it turned out, he was slightly kind of feeling a bit buttonholed by just being Q. And he was a very versatile actor. So I think something about it must have piqued him.
Yeah.
So we followed up the letter.
The devil as well.
Exactly.
Who
doesn't want to play the devil? So we seal up the letter. We put a stamp on it. We put it in the postbox. Now, and I don't know how, so people will be saying, well, how did you find his address? So I think what we did is we could look up somewhere, and it was probably like in an old directory, or, I mean, it was no internet. So it was probably a book of the equivalent of like Spotlight or something. You could find actors. Yeah. And I think we knew someone who had a copy of Spotlight, and they found him, and there was an agent. So it's like an agency address. So we wrote it to them. And we waited, and we never expected to hear anything back, right? It was like casting it into the wind.
Did you have an idea of what you would do if you couldn't get him? Were you going to also play the devil role, or? I
think we must have thought that by that point and I may be misremembering this, but I have a sense we liked the idea of an old figure who kind of was almost like the caretaker for the castle, a bit like The Shining, I suppose.
It also grounds your film as well if you've got an older actor with you guys, so it doesn't just feel like a young film.
Absolutely right, completely. I think we were slightly aware of that we just looked a bit silly with these two kids basically in a castle. It's like quite difficult to find a story, whereas if you can throw an older figure in, you can play with, is he the owner, is he the caretaker, what's the so I think we wanted someone older, and Desmond was first pick, right? It wasn't a long roster here, Dan.
Yeah.
So we waited and thought nothing of it. Anyway, I don't know how many weeks later, but a letter arrives. Open letter, handwritten from Desmond. Dear James Ed, what a wonderful project. I'd be delighted to come and play the devil in your movie. I've been looking for a change up for a while. Exclamation point. There will be some expenses for me to drive to Wales. However, and it said, that castle, it was called Penhow Castle in Wales. He said, strangely enough, I'll misremember the story, but it's like my uncle was the vicar of the church in Penhow, and my uncle and aunt are buried in the churchyard at Penhow Castle. It was something freaky. And of course, Llewellyn, we hadn't made the connection really, but Llewellyn, Welsh name, Welsh connection, this was a castle in Wales. Yeah. So, I mean, I think for him, it felt like just this is kind of spooky and weird. And I think he was just like, I want to say, he was fairly elderly by then. And I think he, like other people in their careers who will help you out if they're kind of at the end of their career and you're starting out and we ask nicely, he's like, this will be fun. So he said, well, would you pay my expenses? Which is basically his petrol.
Yeah. And you were like, jog on, Desmond.
So
that is a step too far.
I will fast forward in the story to say at the end of all of this, we did send him or his agent a check for, I believe it was about £102 to cover the cost of his petrol to do this role with us. I think his fee on Bond at the time was about £10,000 a day. And he'd done it for us. He'd been like with us for 2 days for £100. And I remember we sent a check. We'd opened a bank account, right, for this film. We wanted to do it properly. We had a community bank account. And we sent him a check. And then I remember, I'll never forget, the agent receiving another letter, looked very formal, saying, thank you for your check from Mr. Llewellyn. However, this has bounced. and the funds say that they're not available. I was like, oh my God, that is so embarrassing. So we did find a way to give him the £100 somehow. So suddenly we were like, oh my God, we got Desmond Llewellyn. We got a world famous name in our movie.
Yeah.
So that was, and I think that was the most exciting thing. So I think at that point, then I got typing the script. It was on an old typewriter. And wrote this absolutely terrible story about, I can't remember, two young people, the inheritance. A grandfather was going to leave his inheritance, but he wanted his grandson to prove the strength of his mind by breaking down the mind of another person.
Wow.
So essentially, my character was the bad one, actually. And then the other character sort of came, sort of like, oh, let's have this fun weekend in my grandfather's old castle. I think we're inspired by, there was a Susan King book called King of the Castle, and we may have been inspired by that. We studied that in English about sort of one kid who bullies the hell out of another. So basically, it's called my character bullies the hell out of this guy to show to his grandfather that he's got what it takes. And then and Desmond sort of appears as this ghostly figure and does all this weird stuff and appears over the bed as this sort of hovering grandfather. But then it's like, is he actually a demon? I don't know. I mean, it sounds so terrible. It hasn't got any better.
I think it's brilliant.
It hasn't got any better, Dan. But
High
I think
concept.
I do understand, when we talk to teenagers, often they're drawn to, some stories like this. It always feels quite appealing.
Yeah.
So then I remember we wrote this. I wrote a draft of the script. People fed in, gave comments. Ed read it. And we made it what we thought was as good as possible. And then I remember we needed some crew because I think the two of the other guys in Quadrant said they didn't want to do the film thing. I think that was it. So it's just Ed and I at this stage. And so we then got the only kid in the school who knew how to use the camera. His name was Dan, actually. He was not Dan.
Perfect.
And he'd sort of done filming the Carol concert. So we're like, great, get him in.
He's hot off the back of, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Carol's the musical.
95. Yeah, huge.
The sequel.
And then we need a sound recordist. Now, sound, I was like, what do you do with sound? I have no idea about that. So there was one kid really good at electronics, like he was a genius. So he was quite close with Max Horsey, the electronics teacher. So we got him in as a sound recordist. And in fact, I think another one of the Quadrant, sorry, I don't want to think George produced the movies, but I think he didn't come on the shoot, but he was involved.
Yeah.
So we ended up with this small group of us. And then it was like, okay, we've got logistics. So I suppose the lesson that I learned from Young Film Academy is that bit actually was tough, was just finding other young people who you can work with. And I think that's one of the things we see at Young Film Academy, right, is that a lot of people come, and one of the joys is that they meet other like-minded young people, and they can work on that network, and they can work together afterwards.
For sure. And they do make films, don't they, outside of summer camp, which is really cool, or outside of any of the courses.
Yeah, exactly. So we had our little group. We'd sort of found ourselves. We didn't know each other particularly well. And then it was like simple stuff like, how do we get to Wales with the camera and this sound recording gear and stuff like that? And I don't know, did someone's mother drive us halfway and then we got a train? I mean, I don't remember, but I remember the logistics bit and thinking that could have been better.
Did you sleep at the castle? How did you?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, exactly. We were sleeping, and this castle this is not plush. This is like a medieval castle that's just got bare stone everywhere. And I think virtually no heating, and a few like lights that hung from the ceiling, which was great. It looked great and was fun, but yeah, it was pretty. No. I think we actually slept in a local B&B. I remember that, like at the bottom of the hill. I think.
Nice.
And we all shared a room, like in a dormitory type thing. It's a sort of hostel B&B thing. So logistics was terrible. Again, the lesson is that is tough when you're a young person. You don't drive. Yeah. You don't have the ability. All of that logistics stuff is really tricky, and film is annoying like that. You've got to move gear, and so that was tricky. And then we got on set, and we start filming. I think we had about 2 days before Desmond was going to arrive, and we were very nervous that by the time Desmond arrived, we wanted to feel like a film crew.
Yeah.
And Ed directed.
Go and buy some T-shirts that say crew on it. Was that?
I don't think we did. And I remember it was so cold. We were wearing like whatever the warmest clothes we could possibly get.
Yeah.
And we start filming, and that's the other thing we did. Actually, it was so we decided we wanted a title sequence for the movie that wasn't bog standard. And we actually shot this. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm remembering this. We we made on a bit of canvas, big. It was a sheet. I think it was a sheet. I think it was a bed sheet. And we got in the art department, and Ed was very good at art. Ed was always very artistic. He was very good at like batiks, which is a form of wax type thing, and he was very into the art department. So we went down there, and Ed did this beautiful. We wrote sort of taboo in this sort of hand font thing on this sheet, and then we dipped it in wax, I think, or had some sort of wax, and then we got no permission for this, but we went, and at the end of the playing fields there was like a. Well, I mean, it would have been, a pavilion is too grand. It was basically like a shed.
Sure.
It was a sort of wooden shed that if you were playing like a football match on that thing, you'd sort of sit in if it was raining. Yeah. And we hung this sheet up, I think, and then we hung the sheet up, and the plan was to wait till it was at night, and it was winter, so it got dark at like 4 anyway. And then we made in this out of wood a platform for the camera, because there was no such thing as a gimbal. So if you want to move the camera, it was very difficult. So we literally made this thing that had these 4 handles, so it could be held by 2 people, a bit like a stretcher. It was massive. Yeah. I remember it was big because the camera was big. We put the camera, and you'd literally strap the camera down in the middle. But we'd hold it at the side so you couldn't be seen. So the camera would point forward, and then 2 people would be on the side. Yeah. And that allowed you to run with the camera without it going shaky, 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 because there wasn't like stabilization.
You basically invented the Steadicam.
I don't want to say credit for it, but basically, I mean, it was I mean, there was nothing very clever hydraulics about this. This was just a big bit of wood, and we ran across the field. I remember at night with this camera. So it was very, and then we sort of. That's right. And then we did this at the castle. So we went through the graveyard. That was the opening shot of the movie. So we ran low level, almost point of view of a dog, it must have looked like. So ran through the thing. But it looked kind of more interesting than just a static shot. And we went up above a grave and down and round. And then it sort of resolved into the burning of this sheet, which we filmed, get this, Dan, upside down, so that the flames looked like they were going downwards.
Ooh. But so you had real fire in the school.
So we basically almost set this shed on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember suddenly the sheet got out of hand, the wax was going everywhere, and we're like, oh my God, bringing soil, trying to stamp the fire down. I mean, what were we doing?
Yeah.
So we had this title sequence. So then we shot bits of the opening of the movie. I think we were learning as we went. Ed was directing. We were doing different takes and shots and angles. We're filming.
How long was the film in the end?
I think the film was about 20 minutes, which was long. It was too long. Yeah. And now we say at Young Film Academy to young people, one of the next films, when I was older and when I was a bit more, it was in my early 20s, I made a 3-minute film, which was much better and went on, did very well. And that was way better. Start there. Don't try and do 20 minutes. But we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
And so we did bits of shooting, and I think we thought it was pretty great, although we had no frame of reference really. And then I remember Desmond arrived on set. And that was so he parks up and he gets out, and suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's this guy from the Bond films.
That was probably your first encounter with someone from the movie business, I guess.
Yeah, totally. I'd never seen an actor that I'd recognized from TV close up in the flesh. Yeah. And then we're and there's photographs actually, which we still got somewhere of us on this set, and they're all black and white, and they look pretty awesome, because black and white photos look pretty awesome. Of us as kids with Desmond Llewellyn on set, and us talking to him with the script and doing all this stuff. And I remember it was kind of surreal, and we'd just sort of talking. He'd be talking about Sean Connery and doing the scenes with Sean and all of this stuff. And we're basically blagging it. We're pretending like we know what we're doing, and we quite obviously have got no idea. But he was really, really patient with us and really sweet. And I think he did a day. Did he do a day? Maybe he did 2 days, something like that. And we just had an absolute blast.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Did it bring out a better performance in you, do you feel, because you're acting against someone that is brilliant, or that's experienced or recognizable?
Looking back on that movie, my performance in that is so theatrical and over the top that I think I just went from ridiculously theatrical and over the top to, when Desmond's there, worse.
Oh, wow. Because it was almost like the pressure of trying to impress. Yeah.
That was terrible. Wow. But again, that was another lesson. But we'd never done this before. Young people now come to Young Film Academy, you learn all this. finished this 4-day shoot, whatever, tired, exhausted, everyone's arguing, no one's really had any decent food, eaten half a sandwich, the drill. And we finish. And we go back and we start editing, right? In the electronics department on this massive machine where you're going to go rewind, fast forward. And I remember you did a fade. A fade was to go literally sort of get two knobs and you turn them, and you had to do it live. Fade on, fade down. If you wanted to do like credits, you physically had to film a bit of paper, like a rostrum camera, with the camera, move the camera up the bit of paper.
Yeah.
I mean, now it would be seen as like really, I suppose, like retro.
You're giving me
cool.
ideas, I'm going to be honest. Like, it's pretty cool. I think I did film some titles once, and it was a really cool aesthetic. Especially when you throw some digital manipulation over the top, then you end up with something that you couldn't have just made in the computer, and it makes it more interesting and engaging, I think.
Yeah, totally. So we were editing and we were making the tape worse. We were very aware that every cut point made the tape worse. I do remember that the excitement of editing was that real sense that you watch some of the rushes and you sort of go, oh my God, that is terrible. And then the magic of when you put that shot next to that shot, and then you cut away from the performance, which is terrible by me, and you go to something and then you go back and then and it was like, oh, hold on a second. That starts to feel, and then we sort of got to the stage, I remember when we were like, actually, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think that's the classic journey we see now with all our young filmmakers. We can relate to that sense of you go, this is going to be amazing. This is really hard. This is really hard. Oh my God, we're never going to do this. This is terrible. We are doing it. We are doing it. This is great.
Yeah.
So we get through the edit. I think we got a music teacher at our school composed the music, which was very sweet of him.
That's very cool.
So took him and composed it on it. He had a sort of synthesizer type piano thing, and he wrote something, and we put that on. And then, so we got this film, and I said 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and we were super proud of it, right? And we got a VHS, and you could get VHS tapes copied. But this is before YouTube, before, like, how do you distribute your film? And we say this at schools because young people today feel, they don't understand a world where you can't just send something to someone in Australia immediately and for free.
Yeah.
But we encountered the problem of this distribution, right? We wanted people to see this movie that we were super proud of. But how did we do that? The only way you could get someone to see it was to physically give them a VHS tape, and they had to put it in their machine and sit there and watch it. And so we were suddenly struck, I think, by the enormity of that task of getting people to see it. But then, a bit like the kind of, well, every film needs a film star moment, we went, well, every film has a premiere.
Yeah.
You got to have a premiere.
Have to.
So we're like, well, what do we mean by a premiere? So we went to a local cinema in Oxford, and we said, can we rent the cinema? And they're like, yeah. And they gave us some wonderfully sort of community deal to have the cinema for an hour. So we're like, great. So we can rent the cinema, get all our friends in and family, and we can show them the movie in a cinema. And that's a premiere, right? So we did this, we booked this, and we wrote to Desmond and we said there's going to be a premiere. And Desmond said, well, I'd love to come. And so suddenly, Dan, we got a major film star coming for our premiere.
Yeah.
That we were renting the cinema for sort of £40 for the hour.
Did the cinema then want to increase the price because they were like, well, if they can afford Desmond Llewellyn, then
they're paying Desmond £102 for petrol. Yeah. And I do remember that one super exciting moment that morning. So there was a buzz. So we got to send out invitations to our premiere. And I mean, this is the whole like fake it till you make it thing to some degree. Like we thought it was a premiere and we made everyone, and premieres are fun. So we sent out an invite, everyone got dressed up and they all arrived. And I remember the morning, the cinema, we arrived and it had one of the old school sort of things outside where the letters are sort of like, you stick them up on the big light board thing, whatever the technical name for that is. And we said, can we do that? And they were like, well, if you want to do it with a ladder. So I remember getting up the ladder and literally sticking like taboo, getting the B, getting the O's, sticking it
that
up.
Must have been so fun, actually, because something that almost no one in the world of film gets to do is change those letters. And you're getting to do it to put your own film up, not someone else's film. You're not doing it because you just work at the cinema, but you're getting to have every almost tactile experience from the process of conception to delivery, including those letters. That must have been really cool.
And I think I'm such a believer in that. Like, film isn't just about. There's so much around the experience of a film that joy could be had from. And that was never done it again. But it was one of those moments. So put up and I remember standing back and looking at the cinema, and it had our film's name on the cinema, and it was just like, wow. It'd only taken like 7.5 minutes to do it, but it felt like a huge step. It was like, wow. And I remember being super nervous. And then I remember thinking, well, at least unlike the plays we used to do, because that was nerve-wracking. People used to turn up for a play that we were doing, and you never knew, would you forget your lines? Is it going to go well? Will the lights come up at the right time? And all that stuff. And suddenly we were like, well, as long as someone presses play on the tape, it will be the thing that we've done, which was another big lesson, that film has that advantage, although it does get a bit more complicated with projection and blah, blah, blah. So we rock up. Oh, actually, sorry, to backtrack. When we were doing the premiere bit, because it's a fun story. I mean, I'm not sure if I should be telling this, but hey, it's the pod.
Please.
We should do it. So we were like, well, because we're 17-year-old, we're boys, we're just about, could we have a drink? Oh, beer, ooh. And, which you shouldn't be doing, don't drink underage. And we said, well, a film premiere kind of needs for people to come, adults, to come, want to have a drink. But we couldn't afford any drink, and we couldn't buy it because we were underage. So I remember my school had payphone in the corridor, so I put money in the payphone, and we'd seen in a newsagent there was a drink that was behind in the shelves called Taboo.
Fantastic. And
we'd seen it, and it evidently was alcoholic. I'd never tasted it, didn't have it, but it was orange coloured, and it turned out it was this really disgusting. Like it doesn't exist, I don't think, anymore, unless someone's
like
going to
Iron Brew or something.
And it was kind of like someone had gone for Pimm's, but like tried to make it orange flavoured. And it was really bad and cheap.
Right. But
anyway, we saw this. So we looked up the number of the people who made Taboo the drink. And I remember the other lads were sort of just outside the telephone booth, and I was sort of shuffled on to do the talking, as it were. So put the money in, put your 20p in. Yeah, hi. I wonder if speaking to someone in the marketing department. Oh yes, hold the line, please. So you're on phone at school.
Straight through, they didn't care. Nowadays, you were not getting through that switchboard.
Nowadays, you're never getting through that switchboard. The guy's like, hello? So I'm like, hi. This is James Walker. I'm the producer on a movie, Taboo, starring Desmond Llewellyn from the James Bond films. And we're having a premiere on so-and-so date at this so-and-so cinema in Oxford. And we're looking to see that the film is called Taboo, and obviously there's a marketing tie-in with your drink there. And we're wondering if you're interested in taking up a sponsorship opportunity. Silence. I was like, oh my God, am I in trouble? I'm going to get in trouble, right? I mean, I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid.
That's when you expect to hear like the headmaster at the other end of the line. But like, I'm listening to this, James Walker.
So there's a pause. And then he goes, yeah, sure. How much do you want?
It's like, you're not ready for that question.
And I'm literally got the phone here and I'm looking at the lads going, what is this? And so I'm gesturing. He's sort of... So he goes, is 12 enough? So I go, so I'm thinking he's 12 bottles. Now, that sounds to me a lot, right? It's a lot. So I go, yeah, 12 would be great, looking at the other guys. And they're, gesturing, well, hey, 12 would be great. And he goes, okay, fine. Yeah, we'll get the 12 cases over to you. Where would you like... So he was saying cases, not bottles. And a case has got like 12 bottles in. So we're talking about 150 bottles of this stuff.
Now you need 150 guests.
So, yeah, we didn't have 150 guests. Toto. So he goes, where would you like me to deliver it to? So I think there's no other option. I gave the school address because it was we were at a boarding school. So I remember then there was a bit of a gap, and then I remember being in an English lesson, and I remember my housemaster came and he knocked on the door. And he said, James, can I have a word? And he said, you know that it's illegal to have alcohol on school premises? And I said, yes, sir. And he goes, well, a lorry has turned up saying that it has 12 crates of alcohol for you. And to be fair, actually, my husband, I explained the whole situation, and he took it, he stored it safely, and then actually arranged for it to be brought. I think we gave him most of it and brought whatever was necessary. Anyway, so we ended up
the housemaster tax.
We ended up with Taboo sponsoring our premiere, so we were serving everyone the adults, this rancid orangey liquor. I'm sorry, Taboo, if you're still in existence, but I'm sure you're not.
Based on your experience of the flavour.
Exactly. And Ed did a batik, which is the sort of wax thing of Desmond, which was beautiful. I remember that was a gift, and we gave that to Desmond as a thank you at the premiere. And so he had this kind of quite big, beautiful picture of himself, which was his thank you. And everyone came, and, the movie was terrible, but we all thought it was a laugh, and everyone had a good time. And I remember we went out afterwards, and we had shown our first film. We were filmmakers, tell us we weren't. We put the name up at the cinema. And I think that psychological change, plus all the stuff we'd actually learned along the way, was super important.
Yeah. That is, quite the journey. Sorry, I'm looking up. It seems like Taboo might still be around.
Oh my God, it's a disaster. I don't mean to be libel. I don't mean to libel Taboo if you ask the drinks company or the drink brand. I'm sure it had some very nice things about it. It's probably delicious with ice or something.
Yeah, it might not be. It's listed on Asda's website, but when you try and click on it, it takes you nowhere. So just
we might be.
But you've gone through the whole experience there, though, from conception to shooting a movie and delivering it, and every step of that journey was a learning experience. But the other thing that struck me as well is that you were learning on almost every front, as a lot of filmmakers are, but also taken to the nth degree because you're also acting in it. So you're sort of learning what it means to write a script, learning how on earth you even film something and assemble it and construct something that feels like a movie, with music and everything like that. And then delivering it, obviously, performing on set, and then delivering it as well, and trying to make that as big of a event as possible, which is, bums on seats is the number one battle. And you certainly found a way to lure them in with some free Taboo as well. But when you look back at it, do you wish that you'd done something easier? Or do you think actually, obviously it's inevitably going to be challenging regardless, but do you think it was the right level of challenging? Or do you think if it was harder, you maybe would have learned even more lessons? Or do you think you maybe would have learned lessons better if you had bitten off something smaller to try and make?
That's such an interesting question. I think, let me ask the question, what were the big lessons that I've taken? I mentioned some of them, but gone. But I suppose a few of them that informed Young Film Academy a little bit is that we finished. We actually finished that film. We could have given up. I remember the editing process. We got so bored watching, take 50. How many takes did we do? We had no idea of what was shooting ratio. So we had no idea of, so we were doing that thing that we see young filmmakers doing at Young Film Academy in their own time. And we try to teach them, don't go and shoot 20 takes because you'll get bored in the edit and you'll kind of lose the ability to tell. Just, do 2 or 3 if you need to, and then that's it. You're great, you're done, move on. And then the editing experience becomes so much easier. So we just got lost in that stuff. And I remember there was a period where we thought we weren't going to finish this because we were busy. We had other stuff. We were doing exams. We were blah, 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 all that other stuff. So it was kind of like a hobby. And we were doing it piecemeal. We'd meet in the electronics lab to edit for an hour on a Wednesday afternoon. And we were amazed how slow. And so the weeks passed and we'll never get this done. It probably took us 6 months or something to edit that movie. Now, a whiz like you, Dan, would have edited it in 6 hours.
6 hours, yeah.
But probably less. But so I remember that I'm looking back, I'm just proud we finished because I think a lot of young filmmakers have this experience. They try their own version of the Taboo story, whatever that is for them. They get some people together. Obviously, getting hold of a camera now that's way better is so much easier than it was, and all that stuff. And they film something. They film too much stuff. And then they look at it, and it's not as good as they thought because they don't really know how to light it. They don't know how what the shot sizes are. The story's not working, and so they watch some of it back. They think it looks like Netflix because it doesn't, and they think, well, that's not very good. And then they get a bit disheartened, and then they get a bit bored, and then they're halfway through the edit, and someone says, "Come and do something funner," That's a word. And then they're done.
Call
They
of
leave
Duty.
it. And they just, exactly. And then they leave it and they never touch again. And so then they go, well, yeah, filmmaking's not for me. Because their first time they didn't finish. So finish is the big lesson. Because once you finish, that's the hard work. You can now, especially now, take that thing that you've worked so hard on. You know, what's the expression we love at Young Film Academy? Pain is temporary, film is forever. You know.
Exactly.
And that's not to say that filmmaking is always painful. It can be incredibly joyful, but there is an element. It's hard work, you know, and it can be grueling at times. But when you've done it, we could send those VHS tapes out. And I remember we made the labels on the VHS tapes and we stuck them on ourselves and we made the design for the cover and we wrote a little bit about the story on the back and we put names on the back and we had these VHS tapes that we, you know, and we could sort of pass it around.
Like that. I used to get like DVDs and I'd get like the printable ones and I could print directly onto the discs, and it was amazing. I spent ages in Photoshop like designing the DVD labels and then the DVD cover as well, getting all those logos in.
Totally, and make it look pro. Logos. Do the font right. You know, that fun makes so much fun. We used to have that in the early days of Young Film Academy, where there wasn't the ability to send out links online. Everyone would get a DVD of the film they'd made, and we had a big DVD printer with 25 trays. And all the trays would go. It was a nightmare. But
when did that stop? Actually, that's interesting.
I think we stopped doing that last week. It was a long time ago.
It's like you moved from Love Film to Netflix, basically.
Exactly. That was exactly the transition.
Which Love Film, for those that don't know, is like, it was a subscription service where you paid monthly. It's what Netflix was in America before it became an online thing, but you would pay monthly and get an unlimited amount of DVDs a month, but you could only have 5 at a time. And once you'd watched it, you could then send it back and they would send you the next film on your list that's available.
Exactly.
It's really cool.
It kind of went from the video store to that kind of online DVD or the mail DVD thing, and then finally where we are today, where it's super convenient. So I think the finish was great, and of course that the chances of finishing are so much better if you try to make something that's 60 seconds, you know, because you've got a 90% chance of finishing. As soon as you do something stupid like we did and you try and do 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, we see a lot of young people, because the other thing to say, and this is a bit more sophisticated, that storytelling in a short form is actually very hard, right? Yeah. Especially when young people first start, because almost everything they've grown up with, every book they've read, every script they've read, every film they've seen is a long form story. Yeah. Students at Young Film Academy they might never have seen a short film. It's almost like an advert is the closest thing they've got as a reference point. So, and it's a completely different skill. So I think a lot of people come up with stories that fit quite well into 20, 30, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Because that's natural.
It's a short feature in a way, whereas often in a short film form, you don't have the time and space to make a condensed version of a feature. The shape has to be completely different. And the scale of the journey for the character often has to be scaled down as well. You know, you can't make a profound film about, you know, someone completely restarting their whole life, because that story is bigger than 5 minutes, you know. And if you try and do it in 5 minutes, it's going to feel so forced, and you're just not going to buy it. So it's just not going to work as a movie.
Absolutely. And that's hard for people to get the structure where it's like, make something that's going to feel valid in 60 seconds. It's almost like you have to, technically, just storytelling wise, it's a difficult fit. So it's a long-winded way of saying, don't do what we did, keep it short, because then you'll finish. But finishing was the key thing to begin with. Yeah. I think then, to return to your question, like, do I wish that we'd chosen something easier? I mean, and this is just my personality type, but I'm one of those people who almost, if I knew how hard things were before I did them, I probably wouldn't do them. Yeah. And the only reason I've done the stupid things in my life that I've done, some of which have turned out not to be quite so stupid in the end, I think looking back on it, I'm delighted I didn't know how hard it was going to be. Sure. Because once you start, you're like, well, I mean, you've got to keep going. And you just keep going, you keep going. And so, no, I think that it was good that for me personally, that was a baptism of fire. Yeah. And I think the other thing I learned is that, you know, those little elements, you know, yes, having Desmond was amazing because it was a kind of calling card and it was fun, and you could say to anyone, it's got Q from the Bond films in. And that was quite fun, even though the film was terrible. But I think I learnt that, you know, when we had this little castle in Wales, it didn't look like someone's bedroom. It looked a bit different.
Yeah,
a bit like, you know, Project Paradiso that we just completed with some of our best students at Young Film Academy, where they went out to Sicily in February and shot this fantastic movie. That elevates, just the location just gave it a look and a feel that was different. And I think Taboo benefited from that, because when you watch the movie, people were stepping into a different world, and they're kind of like, oh, how did you do that? How did you create that different world?
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those things that really, it hasn't changed from when you were making films to now. The location, you need to think of somewhere that you can actually film and you can tangibly set your film there, you know, so that you don't have to have the level of suspension of disbelief like you had with your film when you were actually in a music practice room. Thinking about what locations you have is so much more. That's absolutely right.
When we pointed the camera at a bit of a castle with a kid in it, it looked like a kid standing in a bit of a castle because we were there. You know, there was a literal thing that helped. The sense of how much the teamwork was important. You know, we all fell out, we all got tired, we all got ratty, all that stuff. But I realized how important that is to keep that sense of positivity and morale.
Did the sound recorders know what they'd gotten themselves in for? Like, or did they, like, within half an hour be like, wait, I've got to just stand here and hold this microphone? Like,
no, I think the sound recorders was really, because they'd never done anything like this before, but they were really technically good. I mean, especially for a kid of 16, 17. And looking back on it, that young man, he did a brilliant job. I mean, actually the sound, which is usually, as we know, the worst thing about young people's movies, because they can often get a nice picture now with cameras and they've got some nice lighting, but often the sound is just a real technical struggle. And it does let the thing down. And, you know, just to reiterate that message to our young, you know, some of the people listening here, you know, you can do any visuals you like, however handheld, shaky, bad, good. If the sound is good, people will watch it. If you have bad quality sound and the dialogue is distant and it all sounds like it's recorded in a sort of the end of a tube carriage, you can have the best visuals in the world and no one will, they'll switch off.
Yeah.
So looking back on it, he was a hero. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he enjoyed himself. He probably hated it. Probably scarred him for life. He's probably gone on to, I don't know what he's doing. He's probably gone on to do something much more sensible. But I think there was a sense that it felt to us like we'd made a miracle happen. And I think that's another lesson we know we do say at Young Film Academy, you know, every film that gets finished, every film that gets made is a miracle, because it is. You know, whether it's a film made by some of our students or whether it's a film that's made for Netflix release, it's a miracle, as you know, Dan. You know, there's so many moving parts and politics and equipment and chemistry and logistics and finance, all of these things. The fact that at the end of it, you come out with a finished product, if you do, and if that product's actually any good, I mean, that is a miracle.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
And I don't think that sense has ever really left me, basically. Doing that, I think it was like so miraculous looking back on it. It felt like a weird dream.
Where did you get the money to pay for Desmond Llewellyn's petrol from? Because I appreciate, you know, you guys probably didn't have jobs. Like, was that
No, we didn't. It's a great question.
Begging the parents, or?
No, I don't. I think it was a combination. It's a really good question, because that is a good, you know, I think, what was the budget of the film? I think we worked out in the end that we'd spent about £900, I think, was what it cost us to make from start to finish. Train tickets, sandwiches, whatever. No, I mean, obviously no one was paid. We weren't paid. I mean, I think we paid the castle sort of 150 quid for like electricity or something. And so what we did, we actually sold shares, Dan. We sold shares in the movie.
Wow.
For £20. And we basically wrote, again, I don't know, we probably lost money, but postage then was cheap. So we wrote out to letters to everyone we knew, anyone we knew, friends, anyone, and basically said, we're making a movie. Would you like to buy a share in a movie? And I think we were quite tongue-in-cheek. We was like, this could be the next big thing. And we've got Desmond Llewellyn in it from the Bond films. And you, for just £20, you could have a share in this. And I think and we said, you'll get a ticket to the premiere, I think. And people would send us £20 checks. I mean, it was basically it was like Kickstarter, I suppose. It was like a sort of old school mail version of Kickstarter, but just amongst people we knew. And, you know, suddenly when you get 100 people, well, it wasn't 100 people, 50 people gave us 20 quid. What's that? Oh, that's £1,000. I didn't think we didn't raise that. Maybe 40 people gave us. So we raised 800 quid. And we started a bank account. It was called Taboo. I think it was called Taboo. Was it Taboo Productions? Taboo Limited. We had a checkbook, so we felt official.
That is very official. I feel like you've invented the Steadicam, Kickstarter, all these things.
I'm not taking any credit for any of that.
Accidentally pioneered.
But I think it was also that thing of, well, you've got a problem.
Yeah.
And this is where you've got, as a young person, when you're later in your life and your career, if you get into a big corporate structure, and we've had some of the guests on the pod who, if they've got a problem, they just talk to the right department. But when you're starting out, there's no one else to help you. You are on your own. You got to raise the money. How are you going to do it? Well, you've got to do it.
Yeah, of course.
You need to move the camera. You've got to build the thing that you put the camera on. You want to find a place to film, find a way to do it.
Yeah.
So I suppose that leads on to the other thing that I kind of always say at the end of our bigger programs in Young Film Academy, the students, I just say, find a way. That was the other lesson of this. There was nobody holding our hand. Nobody was saying, oh, that's how you do it. There was nobody leading us. It was literally, we were just encountering problem after problem. And it was creative problem solving, and it was great fun. And we found our way. Now, it's different from other people's way.
Yeah.
But for us, that was it. And I suppose to finish off then, we got to that stage. So we had the premiere. And then we started sending these tapes out. A bit like entering film festivals, which now, of course, you'd be on Film Freeway. You'd be like Bish Bash Bosh. You'd be entering festivals for which there is a cost, even though it's less for students. So just bear that in mind. But in our day, we like sending it to festivals, and we actually got picked up. Some like B-movie label in Arizona who put out sort of naughty films, Dan. They basically did business in naughty films, and they were having a private screening of some of their stuff at the Sundance Film Festival, which is a pretty big deal.
That is a big deal.
And I don't know how we ended up sending this tape to someone who passed it. And we ended up a couple of things, because later we actually, Ed and I, we were then 20 years old, and I wrote a show called Born to be Wild, which is about the son of Oscar Wilde, which ended up going to the Edinburgh Fringe, and Ed directed it, and I performed it. And as part of that, we actually went to America and did a little tour around Oscar Wilde's footsteps and took the show around as well. So we ended up in America, which is a whole nother story. But as part of that, we actually we were going to go to the Sundance Film Festival, to this private screening where they were going to show Taboo at the Sundance Film Festival, a private screening.
Yeah.
Which was kind of an amazing thing for us to have potentially that opportunity. And so the lesson was just, keep showing people your film. We went in, Dan, I mean, you won't believe it, I never told you this. We went in we were on the first ever meetings at DreamWorks. Wow. DreamWorks had just been started. Yeah. And we sent a tape to somebody, and we got called in for a meeting at DreamWorks. So Ed and I were sitting there, as I think we were 19 at that stage, so we'd known Born to be Wild, maybe turned 20. And we're sitting there and we're having this meeting, and they're like, great, we love Taboo. Great, what are you doing next? We're like, well, no idea.
It's next tip, always have the thing question. Next. Yeah, always be ready to answer the question, what are you doing next?
Yeah. But I remember that was another lesson I learned. They told us we were the next thing. We were prodigies as far as they were telling us, and then never returned our calls. Never did anything. Nothing came of it. So that was a bit of a baptism of fire. But yeah, it was basically just knocking on doors, just doing it nicely, knocking at doors, trying to find a way to make it fun, and trying. Because what we've learned is, if you ask nicely, people, what's the worst they can say? They can say no. But out of 20 people, if you ask nicely with a slight glint in your eye, you might get one.
Yeah, 100%. Wow.
So that was my experience. But I've banged on for an awful long time, Dan. So have we got time? I think we've got time. Come on, it's an extended episode. Can we do you?
Well, I was thinking we could split it in half as well, so we could release it as like a double bill.
Let's do a double bill.
A double bill. Just when you thought one bill was enough, another one came along.